So I did the review on the 8th and final part of the second installment of the Melting Mii story series by DezzieArts, aka Michelle. And just like I did last year, I wanted to come on here and do a bit of predictions as to what I think the third installment could have. Now, as I said at the end of the other review, I'm not saying that, we will... Sorry about that. But like I said, I'm not saying that we won't, see these characters appear again. One thing Michelle has told me before, in fact, she told me this in a message last year. She said basically there's a good chance you could see him, appear throughout the years, or throughout the year. Mainly, I'm assuming during seasonal portions of the year, like 4th of July, Halloween, Christmas, you name it. But that's about it, because the main focus is the yearly story series of the Melting Mii. Not the Melting Mii, but of Melting Mii and Zahara. And the way this recent installment, the second installment, went down, it kind of did give me, and I'm assuming anybody else that follows it, a bit of clues as to, or hints, maybe Easter eggs, as to potentially what could be in store for the third installment. One of the things that did happen here in this story that I predicted from last year was the fact that we'd get a fusion, a merger. And we did. We ended up getting a fusion, we ended up getting a merger between the two characters, where they merged into one person. Both facially took on each other's attributes. Like they had Zahara's lips, I think her nose, Mia's eyes, a blending of their hairstyles into one. And then as a result, they decided to give themselves, or at least Mii decided to give themselves a combined name that, combines both their names of Mara. That's M-A-R-A. That's M-A-R-A, basically, Mara. And basically, the way Michelle wrote the story, she referenced Mara, as a separate entity, which technically she was, or is, but, it was done, the reference was done in a way that acknowledged that, she's a different entity, but, comprised of two into one, like both pretty much can control her because they're not of one mind yet. And I'll get into that in a moment. Even when, their heads split apart on tendrils, but still connected to the body, it's still connected to the singular body, and then they went back together because, Zahara's like, hey, this is not done yet. I want to see what our combined form looks like in these outfits. I love the fact that Michelle wrote it into where they blended their heads back together into Mara's, that, basically they had, it was acknowledged that Mara said, your best, like trying to kind of indicate that maybe she is slowly becoming her own person, but we're not sure yet. But that was kind of interesting how, she said, or she complimented it by saying, having Mara said, your best. Yes, and acknowledged it in the, in there as, her saying it, not, the combined voice, but just her saying it. Not, like I said, Zahara or Mia saying it together, but as Mara. Anyway, of course, they had the moments, the NFSW erotic moments, even to the point that doing the one they had in the 7th part, like I was saying, basically some of the things I predicted in the for this year from last year, it did come true. Like the fusion happened and everything, and like I said, they had their moments and everything to, even to the point that as Mara, they were at least Zahara, anyway, Zahara wanted to try a little something, and she did, and it caused them to kind of have another erotic NFSW moment, gooey moment, to the point that, as I guess Zahara was trying to hum a song that she knew as a kid to try to keep her mind occupied, it was kind of like a siren song to Mii, and Mii basically let her mouth form on, I guess it was to be like well not appeared, but kind of described as like a droplet flowing down the rear of the fused form. And she's like, just keep singing, and then all of a sudden she just, the part with her mouth is like drooping down on this like little droplet flowing down, just, literally just, literally plops down, just literally, falls off into the combined puddle that they're becoming. And then that, of course, then they have the moment. And then afterwards, you have them go back to the bedroom with Mii putting, kind of like half forming herself, but kind of like top of her is like like in the form of a container or something, with a flowing Zahara in her, because she basically absorbs Zahara back into her, and then decided to go back to the bedroom by creating like legs under herself, and then the other parts like containing her friend, and they just plop down onto the bed and just go from there. Go to sleep from there before returning to solidarity. Here. Not here, but at the end of the second part. And that, of course, as I said in the review, leads us into the third part, or into this final part, I should say. Actually, it was the seventh part. This is the eighth part. So, yeah, what happened at the end, that I just mentioned, happened at the end of the seventh part, leads us into the eighth part, the fourth part of the second installment, which, like I said, basically is hinted at the end, where Mii decides to put her 2 weeks in to leave her job because she wants to do something more, especially pertaining to the lotion formula. Zahara, of course, owning a massage business, decides, hey, I have an idea here and everything. And well, actually, it's Mii that comes up with the idea, and Zahara's like, ooh, let me hear about this, because it kind of ties into her wanting to leave her job and try something different, especially when it pertains to the formula, the lotion formula. And what happens basically is in the last part of the second installment, Mii does go through with her 2 weeks, puts in her final 2 weeks, and then after that, she goes back home and everything. Now, of course, during these 2 weeks, as I mentioned before, and I'll put a link to the entire series, you can read it, she kind of has to hold back on wanting to, go gooey and all that, so she doesn't take the formula. But it's during this time that Zahara is perfecting it. She's trying to perfect the effect, she's trying to perfect the effects of it, basically to make it last a lot longer, going from 24 hours to 72 hours, basically 1 day to 3 days, which I guess, especially, with the weekends and everything, works out good. Friday to Sunday works out good. And then, basically, I guess throughout, she decides to, I guess, for Mia's sake, during her final 2 weeks at her job, Zahara decides to kind of make up for her not being able to use the formula by using it herself and going gooey on her friend, and kind of going into, certain regions of her body, if you know what I mean, especially deep inside those regions and stuff. And then basically, 2 weeks, and then basically, of course, as I said in the review, the 2 weeks passes, and they decide to, on a Monday, because Zahara owns her own business, she can make her own schedule. They decide to have the gooey, erotic fun and all that, but not as much. They decide not to get so puddly and all that, but become more like gelatinous, gooey piles of chocolate and olive, as it's described, where they rub against each other, twirl around against each other, create tender old tentacles, out of each other that they can control simultaneously. And this is where it gets interesting, because then it's during this that Zahara gets a notification of an appointment she has at her job for a client. And this is the first, and the reason this is significant is because it's the first day that Mia is going to join her in doing this. And after, Zahara retracts herself, restores herself to human, Mia decides to retract herself, but instead of being human, she turns into like a serpentine-like snake or creature, and decides to catch a ride with Zahara by slithering up her leg and into a certain Andaman part of her, if you know what I mean, and curl up there until they get to Zahara's business. And it's here where Zahara, of course, as I mentioned in the last review, presents a new free service to the client, where the client can soak in seemingly what's like a mud bath, but it's not. And it gives different, and she even says there's going to be different tingly sensations you're going to feel, but it's going to be worth it. And we find out after the client experiences those sensations and even compliments her, saying she'll be back for more and everything, we find out that the stuff she was lying in, the bath, if you will, was actually Mia. Basically, Mia traded in her old job to be basically the new massaging gooey bath for Zahara's clients. And, of course, she compliments that the client was wonderful, but obviously it also has an effect on her because it allows her face, not her whole body yet, but her face that appears on a tendril to morph, shapeshift basically into the client's face, which surprises Zahara, but, even Mia is like, hey, maybe in time you'll learn about it. And she even curls her neck around her friend. And she even says she looks forward to it with Zahara. And, well, not Zahara, but Zahara says she looks forward to it with Mia. And Mia is like, hey, I can't believe, this kind of business has such great rewards, referring to, being able to do this. So the question obviously is, what does this have to do with next year? Now, before I get into that, a little bit of breaking news. DezzieArts did a poll earlier today, about an hour after she posted the 8th part, if you will, asking basically everybody, anybody that, well, basically telling everybody that she's fleshing out ideas for 2023's installment, but she's already written part 9, and if this is interest, she'll post it next week. And that was 3 hours ago. Oh, actually 4 hours ago. She actually posted it around the same time she did the 8th. No, she posted it around the same time, so both at 4 hours. But basically she's asking, well, like I said, well, first of all, she's letting people know that she's fleshing out new ideas of a 2023's installment, but she's already written the 9th part, and if there's interest, she'll post it next week. And as of this time, there is 56% in favor of a preview of next year's arc would be fantastic, while 44% said they'd rather be surprised. So it looks like we're going to get a bonus part, which, last year I suggested to her, after she did the 4th and final part, that, hey, you still have one, because she was posting it, I think, on Mondays, unlike this year, where she's posting it on Wednesdays. I told her, hey, you got one more Monday, you got Memorial Day coming up, which is around the same time as this year. I said, why not post one more installment, or at least something on the side? Now, she didn't do that, but I guess she's taking, the positive reaction to heart. She's basically taking the positive reaction to heart. She's taking the positive reaction to heart to the entire series, and she's like, okay, I've already got the other one done, for next year. Why not maybe give them an idea of what's in store for? So anyway, we'll find out exactly, what the 9th installment entails too when it comes to next year. But I got a feeling it'll still be a little bit of fun and all that. It'll probably explore more. The 9th part, if it does go up next week, we'll explore more about, Mia and Zahara using this formula to help out the massage business even more. And I think what will happen is that over time, Mia will, because Zahara mentions this in the 3rd part, that she has more of an experience and mastery over it. I think that what's going to happen is I don't know if they'll do. I don't know if it'll be described and written about in the ninth part, but I do know that the way it's being set up, and again, I don't know if it'll make an appearance in next week's part, a preview for next year, but the way it sounds honestly is they're going to both take turns being the bath for the clients. And like I said, because Zahara mentions at the end of the last part that, Mia has more mastery over the ability to not just, do all these things more than she can, but now also change her appearance facially, maybe even bodily. I think what's going to happen is that Mihai will turn herself into a copy of Zahara, where Zahara takes her turn at becoming the bath for the client, and vice versa. But now the question obviously is, what else will we get afterwards? And maybe will we see it in next week's installment? That is the question, or bonus installment of the second bonus part, I should say, of the second installment of the Melting Mihai series. And again, this is just mere speculation and everything, especially what I just said about them taking turns, which I do see happening, because Mihai is going to master the ability to change her appearance and all that. But again, I don't know if that'll be detailed in the ninth part or not, or if even this one will be detailed in the ninth part. But whatever happens, I do see something else happening. Whether we read about it, I should say, in the ninth part, or we read about it next year when the rest of the series continues. But I could see them getting to a point to where they're mastering the abilities both together and individually, where basically I could see them, and this is just an opinion, speculation, I could see them possibly, as they're mastering the ability and all that, I could see them, probably starting with Mihai, or maybe, Michelle, DezzieArts can surprise us and start with Zahara instead, where they master the ability to split in two. Like, instead of, there being like one Zahara could say, hey, look what I can do now. And poof, she could split herself into two Zaharas. And Mihai, can do the same thing if she starts with her instead. And it could be interesting, because what they could do is they could have the two copies of them, merge together and become Mara. And then you could have basically a very gooey threesome-like moment, if you catch my drift. And that could happen. Not saying it will. It's just mere speculation. But I could see that being like the next step, along with, as I mentioned, both of them taking turns at being the bath for the clients at the at Zahara's massage place. Well, like when Zahara's being the bath, I can see Mihai mastering the abilities along with her face changing to change her whole body to be a copy of Zahara, so that nobody knows, hey, Zahara, the bath they're soaking in that's making them feel good is the actual owner of the massage business. So I could see that happening. I could see them learning to basically split in two, where you have two Zaharas, two Mias, and maybe the two clones merge into Mara, and there you go. The other thing I could see happening, because we got a bit of a preview here, is I could see them shape-shifting into gooey versions of like creatures and animals and all that as well. Like, here we had Mihai in this eighth part become very serpenty-like, where she slithered, up her friend's leg and into a certain part of her abdomen region, if you know what I mean. So I could see both of them mastering that going into the next portion, into the next portion, whether it's, like I said, showcased in the next part, the ninth part by next week, or it's saved till next year. I could see both of them having fun with that, shape-shifting into different, creatures or animals, temporarily and all that. But I can also see eventually the mastery of the power going as far as to where they can become each other's clothing temporarily, and even, obtain, because it's even hinted at here, where when they went and became gelatinous piles of goo to have their moment, if you will, they became semi-solid. So, so I could see them, probably doing that by, with the mastery of the powers, shape-shifting into, like I said, different clothing for each other to wear and taking on a semi-solid state to where, they could do little poses in front of a camera, mirror, maybe walk out and about with the clothing, with the clothing, basically one wearing the other, stuff like that. I could see that happening. And I can even see maybe if she continues this series on for the next couple of years, that they close out that Michelle could potentially close out the third part with them mastering not only the ability to shapeshift, become different clothes and all that, but I could see her maybe, and this is my opinion, maybe having them master so much that they end up shapeshifting into vehicles and stuff. They shapeshift into vehicles where one could drive the other, and the other could just take on the form of, let's say, a motorcycle or a car and everything, because the power, the mastery of the powers have become so, of the gooey powers have become so, great, that now one of them, if not both, can take on these shapes temporarily. The other thing I see happening as well is, and again, it's just a thought, not saying she would do it, maybe she's considering it, but not saying she'll do it. I could see her writing in a situation to where, to really have fun, the girls possibly melt down into gooey puddles, almost very watery like, and instead of, like reforming, I could see in the story, Michelle having them probably seep into the ground and then rise up as like little trees or little flowers with smiles on their faces, faces and everything, and enjoying the sunlight and, experience of being a plant or whatever. Or maybe she'll go a little step further and say, they've mastered the power so much, I'll have them evaporate into thin air, into nothingness, and become little clouds that rain back down, and they rain back down into puddles which reform back into each other or something, or they reform into the fused version of Mara, or whatever. But I could see some of those things happening. So again, what I see happening, again, whether or not we get a clue, a hint of it in the 9th part or not, is I could see them both taking a turn at being the bath for the client, with Miyai disguising herself as Zahara, to, catch people off guard. I could see them shape-shifting, mastering the shape-shifting ability to turn into other animals and creatures of the gooey variety. I could see them, because, like I said, it's described here in this 8th part of them taking on a semi-solitary state where they learn to use the gooey powers to shapeshift into each other's clothing, which they would pose with and walk around with temporarily. I could see them taking a step further with the mastering of the power, with the mastering of the abilities to go beyond that and go into vehicles and stuff, or become vehicles and stuff. And then last but not least, I could see, maybe if she takes it this far, them learning how to basically seep into the ground and kind of grow out of it like flowers or pseudo flowers or plants or trees, and maybe even evaporate where they become pseudo clouds and they rain down, into individual puddles that reform into each other, or into or fuse together into the Mara fusion, and go from there. I can see a lot of this happening. Again, not saying it will, but she is, as she mentions, fleshing out ideas for next year's installment. And again, maybe we'll get an idea with the 9th part, which looks like it will be released, because she was asking if there's interest in it, that she would post it next week. And like I said, 56% of people want to see it, obviously showing that they really enjoy her stories. And looks like we're going to get that. That'll be potentially on, I would say, maybe the first day of June. So basically, a day after May. So close it out that way. So I could see that happening. So I could see that 9th installment happening, the preview. And again, maybe we'll get ideas as to what will happen. And, that's just going to be like a taste of what will be, and whatever else she has planned, it will be interesting to note and kind of speculate on going into next year. But those are just my speculations for the 2023 installment, the third part of the Melting Me Eye series that she's doing. Again, we'll get a sneak peek of it possibly next week with the 9th part to see if any of what I'm predicting will come to pass, and if not, if maybe she's holding off on what I'm predicting and speculating on for next year. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. What are you looking forward to most in the 9th part as a sneak peek for next year, and mostly in 2023? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. Live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Super chat, super stickers are open during the live chat, as well as super thanks after the premiere of the video. So until next time, guys, I'll talk to y'all later.